Sorry about that. I had feedback in my ear. Just right out of the gate here at 9 o'clock, we have the 8 p.m. advisory of Elsa. And right now, Elsa is about 75 miles west of Brunswick, Georgia, with winds of 45 miles per hour. North-northeast movement at 14 miles per hour with the pressure of 1,006 millibars. I do want to remind everyone a tropical storm warning is in effect for the entire South Carolina coast. Tropical storm watch in effect for the North Carolina coast. We also have that newly issued tornado watch for the low country of South Carolina. That includes the Charleston metro area until 5 a.m. And we're also talking about heavy rain in the Charleston metro area. Flash flood watch is up for central North Carolina. A moderate risk of flash flooding for the low country tonight as Elsa continues to move up the Interstate 95 corridor. And that is where I want to bring in Jared Smith, who is in Charleston. Jared, we've been watching Elsa over the last, 36 to 48 hours, where Elsa was a tropical storm, peaked up to a hurricane. And then early this morning, weakened to a tropical storm, making landfall around 11 a.m. in the Big Bend area of Florida, and now moving through southern Georgia into South Carolina and eventually North Carolina. Jared, I know you live in the Charleston area, and you guys will see the first impacts in the Carolinas. That tornado watch up until 10 p.m. or 5 a.m. We also have that moderate risk of flash flooding for the low country. So Jared, tell us what's going on in your neck of the woods and kind of what the outlook looks like for the rest of the evening.
Well, Scotty, it's been actually a pretty quiet day. It's been humid. It's been warm, very cloudy, but so far today, not really much. You have some occasional sprinkles. We've had some, occasional showers ahead of Elsa. Just the atmosphere was just so juiced that it just felt needed to let off a little steam and bring a little bit of rain out. So that's where we've been at. However, we are starting to see the core of Elsa begin to get a little closer. And as that happens, we're going to start to see some of those heavier rain bands begin to move into the area. So I'm going to take us right to the radar. And let me get to the radar that I want to show you. And we'll just put that on pause here. So Elsa is somewhere in here. It is definitely not the best looking by any stretch of the imagination. It's definitely not the best looking hurricane you're going to see, tropical system you're going to see. But that's not what we're worried about. We are most concerned right now about this band of rain that's just south of I-16 in Georgia. And in fact, this particularly strong storm here that could be producing a water spout. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Weather Service of Charleston. They may have to pull the trigger on a land-based tornado warning for this if this rotation keeps up into Georgia here. So most of the weather is still in Georgia. Again, you have a lot of lightning with this one too, but this is the main band that's going to bring us probably the worst of the weather here. And this is going to be time for later tonight, generally in the overnight hours. As we move up towards the Charleston metro area, again, if we look at Beaufort, Hilton Head, we have the rain shield is beginning to move in. We have the lighter parts of the rain shield here. We have a few showers kind of surrounding it. Nothing on the velocity that is too terribly concerning on these. But again, we're going to want to watch anything that's popping up tonight for the potential for a brief spin-up tornado. Again, the tropical tornadoes, they can spin up very quickly and often with very little notice. They are a warning challenge, to say the least. So that is something that we're going to want to watch. But again, we have the main rain shield moving in through Beaufort County now. We look at the 1 hours. We look at the 1 hour rain totals. We have some spots that have gotten about a quarter inch of rain, but your big rain totals are going to come from this band down here, where radar is estimating 2.5 inches an hour as this starts to rotate up into Savannah. So Savannah may have some flooding issues to contend with tonight. As far as fresh water, I think the good news in all of this is there are a couple good things here in that Charleston, we're going to be at low tide. So that's one really good thing. We're going to be at low tide. And we don't anticipate any major surge issues, which is also a very good thing. But that's not to say that heavy rain can't cause freshwater flooding very quickly in downtown Charleston. That drainage gets overwhelmed, pretty quickly. And so that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on for sure overnight, but and also the tornado threat. Again, when we look at the, I've been looking at some of the parameters here, we do have, a fair bit of instability in place, very rich moisture, very rich dew points that should, and wind shear provided by the right front quadrant of the hurricane. Well, not the hurricane, tropical storm, tropical cyclone. It's already been a long one with this. This one has been kind of up and down, but we're starting to see some of those better tornado parameters begin to move into South Carolina. So tornado watch until 5 a.m., pretty well placed. We'll need to see, Elsa's ultimate path is going to really impact just how far inland the tornado threat gets. And, when we've seen the suggestions, the Hurricane Center track as a 5 o'clock has it pretty much coming up through the Midlands overnight. So that is going to do two things too. That is going to spread, potentially even heavier rain further inland, but also could spread that tornado threat inland. But again, right now, the main issue is this torrential band that is riding the coast. And we're going to need to watch that for the Charleston Metro here in the next few hours. See if it holds up, see what kind of character it has by the time it gets here, and see what the center line, see what that looks like.
Jared, you're talking about the Midlands, and we're bringing in panelist Dan Whitaker as well. We just had a question from Jennifer York asking about the impacts of the Midlands in South Carolina there. Jennifer, I can tell you that part of the Midlands are under this tornado watch, including Barnwell, Bamberg, and Orangeburg counties, and the National Weather Service out of Columbia kind of highlighting that area with the most favorable environment for a possible spin up of a tornado this evening. So the Midlands, again, rainfall anywhere between 1 to 3, maybe 4 inches of rain possible with this trek through the Midlands of South Carolina, especially along and east of Interstate 77, Interstate 20 area. So if you live there in the Columbia area, anywhere to the east of that, definitely could see some heavy rainfall with that potential of severe weather. Also a question from Brian C. asking about just check the track. Now it looks like more west than it did earlier today. That is correct. Jared was just kind of talking about the track of Elsa. And we've seen this it's not been a big shift, Jared. It's not been a huge shift to the west, but it seems like every new update that comes out. And let's preface this by saying, remember, don't focus on that center line. If you find yourself inside that cone, the cone of uncertainty, the center of Elsa, or what's left of it, is not going to track directly on that line that you may see on some of the maps. But if you find yourself within that cone, and we've seen that cone moving to the west ever so slightly in the last few updates, that is where we could kind of see the biggest impacts from what's left of this. So you would be correct, Brian, that cone has shifted a little bit more westward, bringing parts of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg metro area into the cone. Raleigh-Durham, as we get into Thursday, Columbia tonight, Columbia, South Carolina. So that is a correct observation of seeing that cone of uncertainty really shifting ever so slightly to the west with every new update. We'll get another one at 11 o'clock, and as Jared was alluding to, be interested to see what what the center does. So one more question, and then I'll give it back to you, Jared, and we can kind of talk about what to expect late tonight into tomorrow. Chris Goodman, living in Concord, I assume Concord, North Carolina, asking about any high winds and rainfall in that area. And again, Chris, I can talk about that. I was just looking at that and giving some updates to my colleagues at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. It looks like Concord area could pick up anywhere between 1 to 2, maybe 3 inches of rain. If we get under one of these heavier bands or heavier cells, it's a very tropical, really moist, rich environment. So it's going to be efficient rainfall producer. So we could see a couple of inches of rain in Concord. Winds, not so much. It could be breezy at times, but I don't foresee any wind damaging winds. But if you have any unsecure trash cans or lawn furniture, definitely could be blown around. But as far as widespread tree damage or anything like that, it's not expected in Concord. So Jared, let's kind of bring you in, and Dan as well, if you want to. Let's kind of, we've talked about the first impacts in Charleston. Let's kind of go through Columbia up into the central part of North Carolina for tonight into tomorrow morning.
Yeah, Scotty. So, in looking at some of the modeling and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to switch over to, I'm just, I'm just pushing lots of buttons.
Yeah, Jared's the button pusher tonight.
Yeah. And believe me, I do not nearly have nearly as many buttons as James Brierton does. So, so we'll keep that in mind here. But what I've got here, this is the high resolution rapid refresh. I'm just going to take a quick peek to see how much of the new run we have. Not enough to really talk about it. So we're going to go to the last hour run here, but you can see I've got the 10-meter winds up. You can see the center of Elsa right here. You can follow my cursor there, and then the main rain band. So the first thing is that Elsa is a very lopsided storm. On the western side of it, you're not going to see much, and in fact, this is going to stay lopsided as it goes through North and South Carolina tonight. So we'll advance this through. This is about 2 a.m. here, and this is when it looks like, again, the model could be a little bit slow. So I think that's one thing that we also need to keep in mind too, is that the model is, it does its best, but sometimes it runs an hour behind. So let's not take these timings as gospel, but this gives us a pretty good idea of kind of what to expect. And you see that main feeder band coming in right into the center of Elsa here, and that feeder band starts getting into Charleston, anytime after midnight to 2 a.m. And then this continues to trek northward. It's going to trek northward pretty quickly into the PD. We should also at this time start to see Elsa accelerate its forward movement to the northeast a little bit. That's what we're hoping for.
And Jared, I'm just looking at this, and again, this is just model run, so don't take this verbatim, but that corridor of heavy rain is connecting between the Charleston, Columbia area over towards Florence, South Carolina. So that's likely where we're going to see a lot of heavy rain overnight, is between Charleston, Columbia, Florence, South Carolina, up into the Charlotte area.
Yep. And as we move forward in time here, going to about 10 a.m. tomorrow, we'll have that feeder band moving through Wilmington. And again, there certainly seems to be, I'm going to put on another, the 850 wind there. There certainly is some shear there that we're going to want to keep a close eye on as well. So we're going to want to obviously make this, I'm going to take myself full screen. Actually, we can all look at this together, but we see the the inflow into here. So Wilmington, Charlotte to Wilmington, probably going to see the most intensive convective rains, honestly, in the I-95 corridor, heading into North Carolina as we get into tomorrow afternoon. And again, the good news is that this will be accelerating out. And so North Carolina, you're not going to have really prolonged impacts, but won't rule out the potential for a brief tornado. It won't rule out, certainly some pockets of heavy damaging wind and rain. And so that's something that we're going to want to, that's certainly something that we're going to want to keep a very close eye on as time goes on.
Yeah, with any tropical system, for those folks who've lived here in the Carolinas, this. For those who may be new to the area, when we see landfall in tropical systems, there's always that tornado threat associated with them. And these tornadoes are not like the tornadoes you see out west that are on the ground for minutes upon minutes upon minutes and are visible. These are more isolated, short-lived spin-ups. But history have proven, even last year, as one of the storms, I think it was Isaias, produced some pretty hefty tornadoes in the Wilmington area. So these tornadoes, albeit they're short-lived, they can still be strong. So you definitely need to be mindful of that. So have a way to receive warnings. Make sure your cell phone's charged up. You have a weather radio. You have at least 3 ways to receive a warning. And these warnings could pop up pretty quickly. So just be on guard tonight in the Midlands and the low country of South Carolina. And then as the morning progresses into the afternoon, you get into central and eastern North Carolina with that tornado threat. So Lisa's asking about winds in Conway, South Carolina. I'm assuming Conway, South Carolina. Again, Lisa, that's the track, Jared, is shifting a little bit more, like we said, westward. So places like Myrtle Beach, like Conway, like Wilmington may not see that long sustained period of gusty winds, but if you were to find yourself in a thunderstorm, that also could produce some gusty winds as well. So,
And one thing that I'll note too is that the winds over the water that are the inflow winds into Elsa are going to be stronger because if you think about it, water you think about friction, right? And land is going to just generate more friction than water will. Water is a much smoother surface than land, and so we're going to see those higher wind gusts. Certainly coming over the water, and we may see in some coastal spots further up into the Grand Strand and into Wilmington, we may see a period of even stronger winds, even though you're well away from the center. That's something that absolutely can happen here, and in fact, as the storm moves, starts moving northeast even further, it'll probably be out of the Carolinas by the time this happens, but it should actually re-strengthen a little bit as it begins to make its extratropical transition. That wind field will expand and strengthen a little bit. So, but that being said, Scott is absolutely correct. Is that the best possibility for seeing any issues with the wind is going to happen generally within one of these convective bands, within a thunderstorm, within where we can get some of that mixing that pulls that wind. Which is stronger aloft because, again, no friction. It can twirl and twirl and twirl. It's the surface winds that we use to measure, what the ultimate strength of a storm is. And so, yes, we could see those gusts. However, again, the expectation is not a major wind event. The expectation is going to certainly be heavy rain. The potential for flooding, I think, is going to far outstrip any wind event here. I would not be surprised to have some down trees. I would be ready for some short-lived power outages. I think that's a prudent thing to do with any storm like this. I would tell you to do that on the summer thunderstorm day. Pop-up thunderstorms. I mean, one strike and you're out of power for a couple hours, and it's really hot. So so this is. And I'm not saying that this is a run-of-the-mill summer thunderstorm, but I also want to put it in perspective a little bit too. Is that this is not going to be, I know that we have recent experience in the PD with some pretty nasty storms, causing a lot of problems. And the good news is this is not going to be one of them. This is not going to stall out. This is going to be moving through very quickly. It'll dry, you get some time to dry out tomorrow. May see some thunderstorms in the back end on just scattered summer thunderstorms in the afternoon tomorrow. But overall, not looking at too hard of a hit right now. But I will caution you that if the parameters stay favorable, we could see that tornado watch extended northeastward along the coast. So that would be the one wild card there that I would want to really keep an eye on for those of you up in the Grand Strand PD and getting into eastern North Carolina.
Jared, good question. I think you may have put Renee there. She was asking, do you expect tornado watches in the Myrtle Beach area? So we'll have to watch how that progresses. Let me see. There's so many questions coming in, so please let us scroll through these. Here's one. Sonia is asking about what it's going to be like in Columbia. So Sonia, tonight in Columbia, we're going to see some heavy rain start after midnight, some gusty winds, potential for some stronger thunderstorms that could produce a isolated tornado. So we'll have to watch that threat, but definitely some heavy rain tonight and the possibility of some gusty winds. They're going so fast. Here's one for you, Jared. Paula Rains wanting to know how the morning commute is going to be in Charleston.
The morning commute. I mean,
you've got another one. Corey's also asking about expected rainfall in Charleston, so I'll let you cover those. Yeah,
absolutely. All right. So the first thing is that if somebody spills water in the wrong place on the road in Charleston, the morning commute is destroyed, right? So so that's part of it. However, what it does look like based on some of the modeling here is that we should get the worst of this out of here by the time the morning commute hits. Now, I think that the other question is going to be, how slow is the storm moving forward? Is this convective band hanging around a little longer than we expect? And, and how much rain has fallen previously, especially downtown? And those are big questions right now. Places could see an inch or less of rain. Some places could see 4 to 5 inches of rain. And unfortunately, we're really not going to know where that is until it happens. In many cases, we see this convective band to the south. The one that we kind of opened the show with here. I'll key in my radar here real quick, and again we'll kind of point at this guy real quick. So this guy that's moving into Savannah right now. Again, this area right here is the one that I'm most concerned about for an overnight threat. However, As long as it moves and it moves, fairly efficiently, we should not have too many disruptions. But stay tuned. I think that's the other thing that, this is this is a tropical cyclone, and these things can throw us curveballs at times. But I think we've got a pretty good handle on, what's going to be what. But again, we may very well see some of the axis of heavier rain even move a little more inland too, especially if this continues to wobble westward as well. So don't be surprised if you see even higher rain totals inland than you do at the coast. That certainly is not out of the question either.
Renee and Will, I will get to your questions in just a second, but we had a question here, and I wanted to bring in panelist Dan Whitaker. Dan, normally out chasing these events, but it's at home tonight. Dan, a few people talking about what the conditions will be like. No tropical storm or hurricane is like another one, but you've been out there enough in these things to kind of give an idea of what is it like when you're out traveling in one of these things. And I would sure you would encourage folks probably to stay home if they could.
That's right. Yeah. And I think, kind of piggybacking on what's been said, one of the good things is this doesn't seem to be a catastrophic event. And therefore we can kind of see this thing sweep through and experience some of the light effects of it. And hopefully, here we are in the Carolinas, you get tropical weather. It just happens, right? This is what we sign up for. So I kind of like to appreciate the kind of the atmosphere that it does bring, this light kind of misty, fast moving rain. It's typically kind of warmer out. It's different than your summer thunderstorm, even where you have cooler rain, kind of bigger raindrops hitting you. This is a lighter, warmer mist when these tropical systems roll through. And personally, I kind of like it. Chasing enough storms, enough of these hurricanes, the first few times I did it, I realized I was going to get just soaked by the first couple hours in, and that's the end of it. So I'm just going to be soaked the whole time. So I've learned to really kind of enjoy the essence of being wet by this misty, kind of warmish rain. And so that's kind of what it's like. I mean, fast-moving kind of mist for the most part that comes and goes in these waves of rain bands is what we call them, which is you can see it spinning around the radar of intensifying or less intense rain bands with little breaks in the middle. And like everything in this world, it doesn't just stay steady the whole time. You'll get some periods where it's a little more intense, a little more windy, a little more rainy, some periods where it seems kind of just muggy out. But either way, if you're in the Carolinas for this event and you do get the opportunity to safely kind of step outside and feel that tropical mist, it's something that I can appreciate. So
that's a good perspective, Dan. You've got a lot of us jealous at times out there chasing these things. Dan, I'm going to transition to a few more questions. Renee Bailey asking about, will Morganton get any rain? Will Silvers asking about Fort Mill, South Carolina. So I want to share my screen here with you all, kind of show you what I am looking at. Can you guys see this? All right, there we go. It's up. So this was a little map that I made, and I want you to see this sharp cutoff. This is, as with any storm in North Carolina, it seems like Interstate 85 plays that dividing role. And so I don't know if you can follow my cursor here, but that's Interstate 85. So if you live along and south and east of Interstate 85, that is where we expect to see the rain really start to pile up. Will asking about Fort Mill. This model's showing about 1.5 inches. So I'd say anywhere between 1 to 2 inches of rain is possible in the Fort Mill area. Renee was asking about Morganton. Morganton highlighted here is about 65/100ths of an inch of rain. Kind of same with Hickory up into Statesville. So you can kind of see along Interstate 40 corridor where we may not reach 3/4 of an inch. So there's a sharp cutoff. Now, I will say this. There's one caveat to that. As we've been talking about a few times now, if that wobble continues to wobble to the west with this storm, we could see these higher totals also transition to the west. So we will see what the latest outlook looks like here at 11 o'clock, and those rainfall totals could be adjusted. But right now, if you live anywhere between Asheville, Morganton, Hickory, Statesville, Boone, up in this area of North Carolina, you can expect anywhere between, we'll say 1/4 of an inch to about 1 inch of rain. If you live along Interstate 85 from Greenville, Spartanburg through Rock Hill, Gastonia, Charlotte, Concord, up into Greensboro, Winston-Salem, you could see anywhere between 1, maybe 2 inches of rain. And it's really until you get into the PD area of Pageland, Kershaw County, over towards Raleigh, Durham area where you could see 2 to 3 inches of rain and kind of the bull's eye of the heavy rain for tomorrow. So that's kind of a rough look at what it looks like with that. So I'll stop sharing my screen here. But that is kind of what it looks like here in the upstate of South Carolina, western North Carolina. There is going to be a sharp cutoff. I was interviewed yesterday by one of our local newspapers, and it is no secret that western North Carolina is quickly getting into a drought situation. All the rain has been either in Tennessee or in the eastern part of North Carolina. So we definitely need some rainfall here in western North Carolina, but it's a game of have and have-nots. And unfortunately, if you live in western North Carolina, it's going to be a have-not situation this go around. So let's see. Looking impacts the barbecue pirate. Sounds like a good name. The barbecue pirate wanted to know about the impacts expected in Greenville, North Carolina. Jared, do you want to kind of talk a little bit about that? I know we were talking about eastern North Carolina just a little bit ago.
Yeah, and I read that as and admittedly, when I see this is my bias, I saw Greenville. I was like, oh, Greenville, you guys are fine. What are you talking about? But no, different Greenville, very different Greenville. Hopefully you don't pronounce it Grenville like you did Beaufort. We have to make our adjustments there. So so we'll talk about that. And again, Scotty, actually, if you want to, if you've got another version of that map, I don't have a good source on hand for that. So if you want to bring that, if you can get me a map that is a little further to the coast, we can talk about that. Sure. But for Greenville, again, the thing that we're looking at the most, the thing that we're looking for is, again, brief periods of heavy rain, feeder ban for a few hours, possibly with some cells within it. And again, I'm not yet going to count y'all out in the potential for a brief tornado. We'll need to see where the center ends up. We'll need to see how it spins down. We'll need to see how all that works out. But again, I don't want to, I don't want to necessarily count y'all out for that potential just yet. However, it would be during the day. So that's a better deal than what we're getting down here. That's for sure. So here's your QPF from NDFT. And again,
Greenville right in this area. So not a lot of rain right now, but that could change.
Yeah. And I think that this is, they're going, and again, this is going to be one of those things that's kind of feast or famine too. And it largely will depend on where the band's set up, and how, and if that feeder band can keep going. There's also going to be some hints of an extra tropical transition here where you go away from that feeder band and more to like a frontal setup. So that forecast certainly gets complicated as you get further northeast, but we'll keep an eye on that right now.
Let's take a look at the wind gusts while I've got it up here. Mm-hmm. You can kind of see here.
Yeah. I mean, again,
you can kind of see the center right here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kind of see.
And to show and so you'll know, Scotty is showing you the National Weather Service forecast grids. This is edited by a human. This is not the models. So this is actually the official forecast grid that we're showing you here. So this is not model guidance or anything like that. This is what is expected to happen.
You can see this feeder band when you're talking about that onshore flow. I could zoom in here, but this is showing wind gusts. This is Cape Lookout right here. Wind gusts 40, 50 miles per hour tomorrow afternoon, early evening. So as Elsa continues, as you were talking about, Jared, that switchover could really produce some gusty winds here in eastern North Carolina.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, that's certainly something that we're going to want to keep a close eye on. For wind gusts anywhere along the coast. I mean, you're going to see some gusty winds. I mean, the tropical storm watches on the North Carolina coast. There's going to be warnings on the marine zones there. So certainly something to watch. We also have questions here about, we have, Scotty, if you wouldn't actually, I'm sorry, buddy, if you wouldn't mind bringing up your rain map. I think we have a lot of questions here coming from Barnwell and Irmo and Tummett Garden City. So I think the thing that we can do here is we'll just
leave this up.
Yeah, we'll leave that up for a few minutes here. We'll do that. So let me take you back full here. And
again, like you said, Jared, I'm not handpicking a model. You know, we have the NEM, we have the HRR, we have the Euro, the GFS. This is straight from the Weather Service. So this is kind of everything put in together and averaged out. So that's the best way that I like to approach these systems. So.
Absolutely. So, so for Barnwell, you know, what we're looking at, you're going to be pretty close to the center tonight. You are under a tornado watch, as was previously mentioned earlier tonight. You're going to be under that tornado watch until 5 a.m. Hopefully it'll be canceled a little bit sooner than that. But in that center track there, you're probably going to see the heaviest rain may very well come through Barnwell. 2 to 3 inches are being forecasted here by the National Weather Service. We are, you know, we'll obviously within any heavier rain bands or any small, you know, thunderstorm elements there, we may have an issue. You know, we may have issues with additional rainfall there. So again, the general good guideline, 2 to 4 inches of rain, and you will have a tornado threat for at least the next little while. Once that center lifts north of you, you're going to be good to go there. And actually, and also the southwest side of Elsa is pretty much dry. This is a lopsided storm, so when it's over, it's going to be over pretty fast. So happy about that. That'll be good for you over in Barnwell. We have questions about Irmo, and again, you're kind of in that corridor where that center is going to get awfully close. And so again, you're looking at 2 to 3 inches of rain. Tornado potential will be lower for you in Irmo. You're not going to be in that right front quadrant. You're not going to be in that area where we're concerned about that tornado risk. So I would not worry about that so much in Irmo. You may see some gusty winds. Again, just as a matter of course, as the center moves through, this is going to be more of a tomorrow thing for you too. You'll see some rain move in tonight, but you know this will very, very much a tomorrow thing for you as well. So let's see. So we've got Garden City, South Carolina tornado potential. So again, let me pull that real fast. Generally speaking, I would say that, let's see, I'm thinking that anywhere that is going to be, if you are in the I-95 corridor, if you're anywhere along or east of I-95, I would probably say that is where you're going to see, you know, the potential for a few spin-up tornadoes. That again, that could decrease the further northeast that you go. So obviously we're gonna keep an eye on that. Again, there's a big question as to how far north and west, or north and east rather, that the tornado threat will go. You know, if the center wobbles inland a little bit more, a little bit better moisture moves in, then we could see this tornado threat go even further, a little more inland. So certainly something that we're going to want to watch there. Onslow County, Scotty, I think I'll turn this one over to you.
Yeah, so Onslow County here on the North Carolina coast near Jacksonville. Right now, everything looks to be passing off to your west. Not saying that you can't get a heavier band of rain, some gusty winds, maybe in a potential tornado. But again, the heaviest of the rain accumulation-wise right now looks to be along the Interstate 85 to 95 corridor. So Onslow County, you should be fine. Just saw another Take Flight 14 asking about Kershaw County, South Carolina, and Kershaw County right here just outside the Columbia Metro. Looks like the heart of this system is going to travel over you tonight into tomorrow morning. So again, gusty winds. We could see anywhere between 2, 3, maybe 4 inches of rain. We'll also have to watch out for that isolated tornado threat. So hopefully that answers you. And then Dean, I just saw your question about the upstate of South Carolina. Good thing for the upstate is you were on the far western part of this. So, you know, outside of some rain showers, I don't think winds are going to be a problem. Severe weather is not going to be a problem, but we could see 1 or 2 tropical downpours that could, you know, accumulate some rain pretty quickly, but no major issues expected in the upstate of South Carolina. So I think we got caught up on the questions, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, looks that way. So
all right, I'm going to take this map down for a little bit.
Yeah,
so
excellent lightning round. Thank you all for your questions. This is what we're here for. And again, even after we cease to live stream, we have Facebook, we have Twitter. Ask us. We are very happy to answer your questions. As this is again. What's funny about these is that you can often say that they're more like rain with a name, right? Like it's and you want to be careful about how you characterize tropical systems, because some tropical systems are legitimately very dangerous. Some of them are on their face not so dangerous, and then you have things like Elsa where you could have pockets of danger, such as the tornado threat. So, obviously it's very difficult to message. And, the other thing, the other hardest part of messaging these things is, we're talking about the center track. We've been talking about that a lot. And we say, don't pay too much close attention to the center, except when we need to pay close attention to the center to figure out just how far inland some of this stuff is. So it's a complicated mess trying to message this stuff out. So that's why we're here. That's why we're here to help you with your questions. And because we know we know that this is it's kind of scary. You see the tropical storm flags flying. You see all the, you see the news coverage ramp up and everything like that. And so we want to make sure that y'all know that we've got your back here, and we're very happy to take these questions for you.
Jared, I know you're on Twitter a lot like I am, and I apologize that I can't find the original source of the tweet, but I'll kind of describe it to you. You're talking about Elsa. There's also a system moving into coastal Texas that doesn't have a name, that is actually producing more flooding and heavy rain. And it was a comparison of what's the difference. And, what is the difference? The impacts from this Texas system. I mean, Elsa and the tornado damage in Jacksonville, which, I saw pictures out of there and just some devastating images out of that. And I'm not sure, I don't think this system in Texas has produced tornadoes, but the rainfall in Texas is definitely outpacing the rainfall that Elsa is giving off. So it is that distinction of these systems that we're watching. We have one that's affecting Texas that doesn't have a name, that could warrant a name, and then we have Elsa that thankfully it's not been too big of a deal out of the damage there in Jacksonville this evening.
Yeah, and that's and that is the most interesting thing. Like, so that Texas storm, the Weather Prediction Center a few years ago moved to, we have shows on this, so definitely recommend that you go back through. We can link you to them. But they have recently, in the last few years, adopted a excessive rainfall outlook. So if you've been following us for years, following anybody on Weather Twitter for years, anybody does weather, you're familiar with the severe weather outlook, the marginal, slight, moderate, high, enhanced, what have you. So the Weather Prediction Center has started doing this as well for flash flood threats. And there is a moderate risk of flash flooding in the South Carolina low country. There is a high risk of flash flooding in Texas. And in the few years that WPC has had this, they have been able to correlate significant impacts with the existence of a high risk. So just give you a general idea of again, sometimes meteorological structure gets in the way of messaging, right? Sometimes the structure gets in the way of the messaging a little bit. And this is going to be one of those cases where we have to straddle the line, be very careful, because people hear tropical storm, they get freaked out. I have family across the country in California. They know nothing about this. This is not something that they deal with. They're good with earthquakes. They don't see their problems coming. They just happen. But they see tropical storm here and they're like, oh God, are you going to be okay? It's like, yeah, it's just a little rain. We'll be fine. So I think that's the thing that I want to make sure that we all get there. We did get a question about the tornado threat in Fort Mill. And so that's going to be right around Charlotte. And I think that is going to not be so much of a concern there. Again, you're going to have the center come through there, but you're not going to have that broad area of wind shear that is going to be overspreading more of eastern North Carolina and the I-95 corridors. So I don't think that you're going to have many problems in Fort Mill.
Jared, I'll butt in from the Charlotte area. James Brierton here in Charlotte, and I think you're exactly right. Here is that SPC day one overnight outlook for tornadoes that shows us that risk, 5% along the South Carolina coast, 2% kind of banding off of that a little bit further inland towards Columbia, but shy of Augusta, shy of Fort Mill. This is the one for the remainder through the overnight, and then tomorrow that 2% slides up along the coast. So does it get close to Fort Mill? Yeah, kind of, sort of. So I won't call it 0%, but I'll call it not really too big of a concern. I think a lot of those impacts for tornadoes and the heaviest of rain in the Charlotte perspective will be south and east of the Charlotte area. And Fort Mill might just be on the correct side of that orientation to not have too much to worry about.
Yep, I think the heavy rain potential in Fort Mills outweighs the tornado threat tomorrow.
Yes. Yeah, that's one of my concerns overnight. I was just talking to my parents who live not in Fort Mill, but just across the state line in Ballantyne. And I was reminding them that their weather radio will be good for three things: tornado warnings, flash flood warnings, and severe thunderstorm warnings. But it's going to be less of a thing in this particular scenario.
Yeah, just remember in the Charlotte area and the surrounding areas, not only Charlotte, but Gastonia, Monroe, Fort Mill, up into Davidson, Cornelius. A lot of that is paved, and there's a lot of heavy rainfall falling. This is a tropical environment, so you're going to get a lot of precipitation falling at once. That doesn't really have anywhere to go, so it just kind of it just flows into wherever it can, and eventually the storm drain system gets plugged up, and we start to see that street flooding, and I believe that could become a concern tomorrow, especially if we see that heavy rain track right along the Interstate 85 corridor.
I mean, I like Eli's suggestion for Brad Panovich.
He's on vacation, so if he's on
That's
vacation,
true.
If he's on vacation, it's not really going to be that big of a deal. So if Panovich is on vacation, that shows you right there. Yeah, we're gonna see a rainy, breezy day tomorrow, but there shouldn't be. I say shouldn't be too big of an issue, but only tomorrow we'll be able to know that by tomorrow.
Question about Roanoke Rapids. I think heavy rain, like we talked about, again in about that 2% tornado risk, which to equate it, Chris Mulcahy put this well today. That's 1 in 50. 2%. And so we say this all the time. You told me I had a 150% chance of winning the lotto. I'd be buying a ticket. So don't discount those 2%. The 2% chance of seeing a tornado and the 2% chance of getting an afternoon shower, because people are so used to be like, 10% chance. I mean, it's nothing. 10% chance of rain and 2% chance of tornado are not the same.
They
not equivalent. Not equivalent at all.
2% is on the lower side, certainly.
Yeah. James, I think what I want to do here is, we've had some people join us from the Carolina Weather Net. We've had people, come in and out, and I'm sure that we're probably going to wrap up here in the next few minutes. So I wanted to do a quick reset as to where we are, where things stand as far as what to expect here for the next few hours. Particularly the Charleston metro area and what's going on right now. So before I do that, we have an interesting question here. Does arrival time mean the worst of the weather or the beginning of the weather? It's an interesting question. And
I have a graphic that might help with this explanation in part. And Jared, I'll let you continue, but I thought maybe this arrival time of winds is a different take on the also popular cone.
Yeah, I actually really like the arrival time graphics better, truth be told. What James has got up on the screen here is the earliest reasonable arrival time of tropical storm force winds. So when we do this, we are talking about, when we talk about this, we're talking about the point at which the winds gets too strong to do any additional preparation. Does that make sense? And
go from preparing to ready.
Yeah, go from preparing to hunker down. That's kind of the idea. So So we're going to see this, generally, so generally speaking, the earliest arrival time, if there are going to be tropical storm force winds, again, that's not a guarantee here. But if we were to see the worst of the weather, the earliest that it would probably show up is probably midday, or maybe a little bit, but more likely a little bit later in the day. That's not to say that Raleigh and Durham and that area is going to get tropical storm force winds. In fact, that seems very unlikely at this point. James, if you can pull the probabilities up, I want to show that one too. Those probabilities are going to decrease very quickly as you get. That's like a 5-10% probability. It's not zero, but it's not exactly a huge chance either. So
the other thing I have here too, Jared, when we compare the arrival times of wind, right? So this is when the wind gets here. So, we're already talking about 2 a.m. in Columbia and Charleston, 8 a.m. in Charlotte, Raleigh. Notice the times are different than the also popular forecast cone, which shows 2 p.m. Thursday over Raleigh, because that's when the circulation, remember the forecast cone is all about the area of circulation, and then we've got wind and rain that extend outward from that.
Yeah, and again, as we mentioned before, this is going to be a lopsided system. So generally, and it's going to be anywhere along and east of the track where you're going to see the heaviest rain and the potential for the strongest winds. And I will also say, just we love, the Hurricane Center is constantly working on this. They're doing wonderful things with it. But I will say that sometimes the graphics don't always do the best job, and they know this. They know this, by the way, that they don't always do the best job of expressing these situations where you have these lopsided storms. So again, certainly could see some wind, certainly could see some rain. Most of that wind is going to come within the rain bands. But unfortunately for your students, I don't think that they're going to get out of school tomorrow. So you're not going to be able to, will not, no class cancellation on that tomorrow. Another question here: is it true Elsa will re-intensify once it enters the Atlantic again? So that is a very interesting question, because yes and no. In fact, it could begin to re-intensify a little bit on land. We were talking about this a little bit earlier. We got the forecast track back up here, and you'll see that it weakens to a depression, but then becomes a storm kind of over the Delmarva Peninsula. Now, what the heck? It's like, hey, wait a second, what's going on here? Well, as it turns out, there's going to start to be some additional forces working on this low. You have additional high pressure and frontal boundaries starting to do this thing, do the thing on the wind field will expand and it will intensify because of a pressure gradient between high pressure and low pressure, and so that is going to help spin this up to a tropical storm. Probably maintaining tropical characteristics up through about Massachusetts, and then once it gets up to Nova Scotia, then it becomes a little more extratropical. So there you go. It's certainly possible. I mean, we saw this with Claudette, which was the most bizarre storm I've ever seen. It intensified to a tropical storm over land, and then it got over water and promptly fell apart. So that happened. But yes, that is that they. Keep in mind too that that intensity in this case means the highest maximum sustained winds. That's going to be a very, very small part of the storm, and it does not mean that it's the same at every part of the storm. It's only going to be a certain part of the storm where you're even going to see that. So
I think we can attempt to show the extent of the winds if I bring the cone back up, and you take a look over Georgia, and you see where I'm going to try to zoom this in. You see over Georgia where the X is, and that's the current location, and then there's an orange circle extending outward from that. That's the tropical storm force winds, right, guys? That's the reach of those winds. So that's kind of the extent of seeing the full front winds, and that's kind of what Jared was talking about too in terms of probability.
Yep.
Gotta put this on a monitor where I can see, the probability of seeing. So I think again along the I-95 corridor, it's going to be windy.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty safe. I think that's a pretty safe assumption there for sure. So,
yeah. Concord would be on the fringe of this one, Chris, referring to a Facebook comment we have here in terms of, I guess, depending on what your definition of high winds are. We can't rule out the chance of seeing some of those higher winds too. And again, it's worth reminding that tropical storm force winds. What does that mean? And I was looking up here. It is. I always forget the knots to miles per hour conversion.
39 miles an hour.
39 miles per hour.
39 miles an hour.
Tropical storm force winds. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and again, that gets kind of into the weeds of jargon a little bit, but generally speaking, you're not going to see that sustained. It's very unlikely that you're going to see that sustained. It's probably going to be within. If you're going to see winds like that, it's going to be in squalls. And keep in mind that they warn on a severe thunderstorm for 58-mile-an-hour winds. So let's put this in perspective a little bit too. When we're talking tropical storm force winds, we're talking below what would typically be considered severe limits. But the problem is that when you get a lot of rain, loosens up the soil, and it makes it a little bit easier for trees to come down. But I want to make sure that we're starting to see, I want to make sure that we're keeping this in perspective a little bit. We have a question from Beaufort here. We're starting to hear a lot of thunder and getting flashes of lightning in the southeast. This is a beautiful segue. We're going to get to the pass the tank question here, I promise. But this is a good segue into pull up the radio here. We're looking at the Beaufort weather stem. Not really seeing a whole lot yet, but you'll probably see some lightning show up on that. And that'll show up. But I've got the radar up here, so let's
I got a little thing to add on to you. I don't know if you've been monitoring. I'm sure you have, but out of McIntosh County, Georgia, in a 1 hour time span from 8 to 9 p.m., there was 3.05 inches of rain measured in a 1 hour time span. In a 15-minute time span from 8:15 to 8:30, 1.48 inches of rain was measured. So that shows you how much moisture and precipitation is falling with that band.
Yeah, it's a tropical system for sure. So yeah, let's talk about this band. Right now, it's lined up pretty much from Savannah. Savannah's right on the tip of this now. So Savannah's starting to get this. The lightning, incredibly, is down a little bit in the last few frames, although it certainly seems like there's some additional...
I did see a strike of lightning in the distance in that Beaufort camera.
Yep.
Pinned it back on the side now.
Cool. Yeah, so that certainly is something that we're going to want to watch pretty closely here. But Beaufort, this is still, still a ways to go on this. So we'll put this in motion here. You still got about an hour or two before this reaches you, but it certainly looks like it is headed that direction. Hilton Head, Beaufort, and as Scotty talked about, the reports that we're starting to get from observers. This is not radar estimates; these are observers in Georgia that these are putting down 2 to 3 inches of rain in an hour, and that's legit. I mean, that's backed up very well with the radar estimates too. So. Certainly something to watch, and again, within these bands, these are the bands that we would be most concerned about the potential for brief spin-up tornadoes as well. So, in fact, there's a special marine warning out on this storm right now for the potential for water spouts. There's a shear line, kind of a line of just lots of rotation, just like intermittent bits of rotation just offshore. We have no land-based tornado warnings right now, which is really good news, and I hope it stays like that all night. But
that same site reporting the rain recorded a 36-knot wind gust. So I have to do the translation. I can't remember what that is.
That's roughly head. That's just slightly over 40 miles an hour. So I mean, again, that's tropical storm force wind. That's and so again, that's about what we would expect from these. Again, in a typical situation, the Weather Service is issuing special weather statements saying that you got a thunderstorm with gusty winds about to come through. So I don't want to
expecting a mesoscale discussion in a moment too.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Yeah, there's going to be
it's up now.
I was waiting for it to. I saw the tweet come out, and I was waiting for it actually to hit the systems. And for those of you who aren't familiar, mesoscale discussion is a meteorologist to meteorologist little chat. It's not a bulletin. It's not a watch. It's not a warning. It just means, hey, we're watching for these favorable conditions, and they've now gone ahead and kind of highlighted the exact area we're talking about, just for that kind of that tornado threat here along that Georgia South Carolina border. So the Weather Service is watching that too.
Yeah. So go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
I was just going to say that it looks like that discussion did post 2 minutes ago. I'm reading it now. They're just basically saying what we went over there. The tornado threat continues. They're looking at the same primary rain band that we were just talking about as well here. So that does seem to be the area of keeping an eye on.
Yeah, well, we'll just have to assume that the Storm Prediction Center is watching the Carolina Weather Group and was like, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea. We should talk about that." And they issued.
I love that timing. Yeah, let's go with that.
I'm going to go with that timing. Correlation is causation, after all. So, again, but that is the band that we're going to watch. That's the band that we're going to be most interested in for the Low Country, South Carolina, over the next few hours. Once that band clears, then pretty much done. That's the good news. Is that it's pretty much over when that band is done. That's going to be the main event. So, that's what we'll be watching. This will be. I could have used my time a little more wisely there and put a timer on it. I'll do that real quick if you guys want to jump in and maybe get the Passatank question real quick.
Yeah. So Passatank County, that is going to be on the coastal area. That's an interesting area because at some point this is going to exit back out into the Atlantic, and some of the models are showing some gusty winds in northeastern North Carolina. So we'll have to see if that comes to fruition. Right now, average model data is showing wind gusts 30 to 35 miles per hour in that area tomorrow afternoon. Again, some rainfall possible, and depending on the instability with daylight heating and things like that, we could see an isolated strong severe storm. I think James was showing a 2% chance in that area for a tornado tomorrow. So we'll watch that area. Again, it's going to be interesting to see what happens as it starts to transition off of the land back into the Atlantic, to see if we could see some winds wrap around and really get gusty in that area. But James had the graphic up there, 2% chance tornado, which isn't extremely high, but it's on the lower end, but it is a threat. So
and it's worth pointing out again that is for after 8 a.m. tomorrow, day 2, if I'm not mistaken. Whereas day 1, which runs us overnight now through 8 a.m., shows us that 5% chance along the South Carolina coast, which brings us full circle back around to the mesoscale discussion we were just talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, and timing out that band a little bit, it looks like we're going to start to see that's going to get into. We're starting to see some of the heavier rain from that get into lower South Carolina now, but the band itself is probably going to be. It's probably still an hour or two behind. I would estimate that we wouldn't even see it in the Hilton Head until for another hour and a half. The leading edge of that main band, and again, so it's not moving very fast. I think that's the thing that we're going to need to keep a very close eye on, because we know that it can produce a lot of rain. And I'm looking at some of the rainfall estimates from the radar here, some of the storm total rainfall estimates, and we're already seeing some spots, 3 to 4 inches of rain, starting this morning. And so with some spots that have seen 2 to 3 inches of rain in an hour. So again, we're gonna have to watch this closely, and this is the main event. This is the thing that we're gonna have to be most concerned about for the potential for brief spin up tornadoes and very heavy flooding rain.
Yeah, and just FYI, monitoring some of the chat, no other talk of anything. I know the Columbia office was watching some storms, but they have since kind of let their guard down a little bit for the time being. So at the start of the show, we were talking about that. So we'll continue to monitor the inland effects as well as this moves into the South Carolina area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, the nighttime part really complicates this. I want to, it makes this difficult because it's a little more cut and dry when you have daytime heating involved, because that gets that instability bubbling. But then at night you get a stable air. You get a little bit of decoupling there, and that can inhibit the tornadic winds from getting to the surface. You don't see that as much on the water, but you definitely see it on the land. Land cools faster than water, so that's why we're seeing water spouts. But I'm noticing that when these circulations get closer to land, they begin to dissipate. So again, that's not saying, there's tornado watch out. The conditions are right, but it's going to be really interesting to see if the tornado threat can continue to translate overnight. That's a big unknown right now.
Yeah, let's show people here real fast where some of these active watches and warnings are here at the 10 o'clock hour. We'll pop them up on your screen. Lots of colors coming your way right now. But everything in yellow, those are the tornado watches that go until at least 5 a.m. And you can see those are in effect for coastal Georgia and South Carolina, kind of up towards the Orangeburg area. Even looks like that was even tacked on as an additional amendment. And then we do have the tropical storm warnings up for the South Carolina coast, some of the inland counties as well, including Charleston and Hilton Head. And then that transitions over to a tropical storm watch where conditions are anticipated in the North Carolina area. I will say, guys, it's interesting to me. National Weather Service in Raleigh was pretty early on this afternoon in getting their their flash flood watch out. That's what's in green there. I was expecting other offices to follow suit. I was expecting some of South Carolina to be painted green tonight. That's Jared. What's your line? We can predict the weather, but not the humans.
Yeah, we can't predict. We can't sit here and try to predict the agencies. So keep in mind too that other areas are going to have a little bit more flash flood tolerance than other spots, and and this is going to be more of a banding event here, but it could be a more widespread rain event up there. And there's also the confidence factor too. Not really a lot of confidence in any one spot where the heaviest rain could fall. It's very difficult to issue a watch under those conditions, and so that's something that we're going to so again. Presume that there is a risk for flooding tonight. I mean, it's a landfalling tropical system. Just assume flooding is part of the game here. But yeah, it's one of those things. But I'm not on the hot seat. I do not claim to speak for the people in the hot seat, and they are a lot better at this than I am. So, but that being said, I think the impacts are clear. I think that the Weather Enterprise has done a good job messaging the impacts, watch or no watch, and I think we're going to be just fine in that regard. So, but yeah, it is interesting to see that little difference there.
And with regards to these overnight warnings, you can catch them throughout the night on our streaming Carolina Weather Net. It's a service that we offer on the Carolina Weather Group YouTube channel. It's absolutely free. No cable or satellite subscription is required. And the fine men and women at the National Weather Service, as they're issuing warnings, those will come right on into the net. So we'll have special reports just like this one we're doing right now. If you subscribe, you'll be notified when we come up on the air with these special live events. But if you just want to find something and park it there, Carolina Weather Net's the place for that.
Yeah, I think we could. Seems like the questions have kind of slimmed down, so we can probably start to put a bow on this. Do want to do a talking point. This was the earliest E-named storm in that we've had, and if it would have remained hurricane status, I think it would have been the first earliest E-named hurricane making landfall too. But we just missed that, and I don't think anybody's going to complain about that.
Can we please not outpace 2020 in anything? Our East storm came before 2020's East storm. I just know. That is not the energy that we need this year.
It's I don't know, man. I don't know. It's crazy to think that we could have a season as busy as last year, but we're sure off to that start. Maybe we can slow things down. I don't know.
So again, we'll be providing coverage to you throughout the night on the Carolina Weather Net. We'll be along with special reports as the condition warrants. I mentioned this in our update last night too. In any situation where, and I'm not saying this will happen, but just food for thought. If we get into a situation where there's a widespread power outage situation or limited internet access, we'll start using our audio podcast feed to deliver updates on the storm and the recovery and the aftermath, because sometimes it's easier just to listen to audio on your phone if you have limited charging or limited bandwidth. So Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is, you get your podcasts. That is a place as well too. Scotty, I'm going to switch gears if I may.
Sure.
And I'm going to put you on the spot.
Uh-oh.
But we learned something else not related to Elsa tonight.
Yeah.
That I wanted to get your reaction from. We have reaction here from Brad Panovich about his counterpart, his competitor, but his friend, Chief Meteorologist Eric Thomas at WBTV television here in Charlotte. And I know you have a relationship with him, and I was hoping to get some of your thoughts.
Yeah. So you can't see, but there's cold chills on my arm because with every story that we bring guests on it, and the first question is, what is your weather journey? And 9 times out of 10, it's about a hurricane or a snowstorm or a tornado or something like that. My weather story starts with Eric Thomas. He was the guy that helped lead me into what I'm doing today, and I'll be forever grateful for that for that meeting way back when I was in 4th grade. And, you know, it's really cool that, you know, I could call Eric right now on the phone and say, hey, I'm having issues trying to figure out what Elsa's going to do. And Eric would take that time to say, well, here's what I'm looking at. Here's what I think. And Eric's going to be sorely missed. And I will guarantee you we will have him on the show before he retires at the end of the year. I wanted to do something a little special. We're going to talk about that after Elsa passes through. But Eric, great guy, for not only for the Charlotte community, but for the Carolinas. He's doing a lot of stuff, trying to get some radar coverage. But one thing that Eric's doing that you may not know about if you don't live in the Charlotte area, watch WBTV, is Eric is a big proponent for adoptions. And his goal is to try to get kids adopted into families. He has his own story, and hopefully if we have him on, he can tell that story. I don't want to tell his story for him, but it's really near and dear to his heart as well. And Eric's just a great guy, and it will be missed. And we're going to relish these last 6-7 months that we have left with Eric on TV. And I know he's about to be a grandfather, and I think that kind of weighed into his decision on wanting to retire. So, you know, after being in the business over 30 years, you know, you start to want to spend time doing other things. And so we will be missing Eric around here, but we still have him for a few more months. So we're going to enjoy him, and hopefully the weather won't be too crazy busy for him, and he can just kind of sail on out.
And I just noticed that his reply from Brad to Eric, wishing him well, has a response from Eric back to Brad. Thanks a million, Brad. Means the world coming from you. It's been great being a part of your team for the last 5 years. This is with regards to the Carolina Weather Project, or the Carolina Radar Project, as these two guys, again, competitors but allies, trying to work to improve radar data for everybody. And I'm picking up on like mild teasers in here.
There's
I don't know
teasing,
any more.
sure.
I don't know any more than what's in here. But they've been on our show in the past to talk about their collaboration. And I'm very interested to have Eric back on to wish him a happy upcoming retirement, but also to find out what it is that they're trying to dangle in front of us.
There's like a dangle there, some about fall of 2021. So we'll see what's going on there. James, you can talk to this because you live in the TV world as well, and I closely follow it. And on TV, yes, you want your station to be number one, but behind the scenes, you can speak for it. I can speak for it. Eric and Brad are good friends, and they don't care. I just heard a tornado beep. So
yeah, it's just conversation, but we all jumped.
Okay,
but actually, this tool that we all jumped because you and I are all in National Weather Service chat, I think it complements exactly what you were saying, is that at the end of the day, weather is life-saving. It's a collaboration, right? So Brad and Eric are in the same chat, sharing information with each other. They also probably just jumped.
Yeah, their goal, Brad and Eric's goal, and Steve Udelson and everyone else in the Charlotte, Charleston, wherever you may be, the goal is to make sure that you and us and all of us are prepared and alerted when severe weather strikes. And you know that's the goal of us. And yeah, you may work it down the street, but in the grand scheme of things, we're all on the same team trying to get out the most important information. And Eric's a good one, and he's got so many stories to tell, and I can't wait to have him on here to tell those stories. So
We'll find the link to when we last had them both on together. We'll throw it in chat, talking about the radar. And I think he gets into the adoption thing a little bit too, if I'm not mistaken. But
yeah,
Jared, you want to take us home from here?
Yeah, we'll do that. So again, just kind of summing everything up right now, again, if you're in the low country of South Carolina, if you have a Charleston address, Charleston down to Beaufort, Hilton Head, you have a tornado watch until 5 a.m. We're watching a band of thunderstorms stretch from roughly Statesboro, Georgia, but the most intense part of it right now is right over Savannah, Georgia, stretching into the Atlantic Ocean, and this is going to move northward over the next few hours, and this is where we're probably going to have our best risk for the heaviest rain. We've had measurements of 3 inches in an hour in Georgia. And we may have, this is where our tornado potential may exist. Best chances near the coast. But again, the tornado watch goes inland, so we'll need to just keep an eye on this closely. Best thing you can do tonight is just make sure that you can hear warnings. That you have a NOAA weather radio. Make sure that that's turned on to tone. Make sure that your smartphone is not on silent, so you can hear wireless emergency alerts. James is doing a wonderful job showing exactly those things. Other smartphone apps. I have another. I use an app called Stormwatch Plus. From our old buddy Eric Procius up in Memphis. That's a good app. But your local television station also has a great app, and it is very likely going to be able to just give you all those warnings too. So, have multiple ways to get those warnings tonight. Keep your phones on charge, especially if you're in the Low Country and along the coast. Keep phones on charge. Keep a flashlight nearby, and if God forbid, if that warning does come out for you. Interior room, lowest floor, basement. There's no basements here. Actually, there is a basement here. I actually toured a basement apartment in downtown Charleston. And it was like, are you really allowed to rent this? That is. I
don't know if I'd want a basement in downtown Charleston.
No.
That's a whole other.
Yeah,
but that's called a swimming pool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the in-ground swimming pool. But again, interior room, lowest floor, bathroom, closet. Hallways are good. Just get away from the windows.
Stairs. To your point, we don't have a basement. It's under the stairs.
Exactly right. So, yeah. So you just get it undercover. The good thing about these is that, they don't last very long. So you're not going to be in your safe room for hours and hours on end. But it is something that we're going to want to watch. And, and again, these things can bubble up very fast and they can move very fast. So again, we'll urge you to, if that warning does come out for you, we want you to take action.
Put a flashlight by your bed tonight. Put shoes by your bed tonight. Not to scare you, not to make you paranoid, but to Jared's point, in a tropical system, these things happen quickly. So if you're woken up by a weather radio, it's slip on those shoes and get to the safe place.
Yep. And so, so that should do it.
Yep, that should do it. Thank you guys for holding down the fort before I log on tonight. Most importantly, thanks for all of the great questions tonight from all across the region. We're so happy to be able to answer them, but we can't do that. That's on you guys, and we appreciate all of you watching from home or wherever it may be, asking those questions so that we can answer them. So again, if you're watching on the Carolina Weather Net, our free nonstop weather source that streams on the Carolina Weather Group YouTube channel. Stay tuned. We'll take you back to regular scheduled programming in just a moment. If you're watching on Facebook or a standalone YouTube event, then don't forget that you can like and subscribe. Here it comes, right? The inevitable like, subscribe, and hit the bell. But this way, as we do break in with updates, we'll come back onto all channels for things like tornado warnings and the such. So on behalf of all these guys, thanks so much for watching this update from the Carolina Weather Group on Tropical Storm Elsa. We'll have the net running all night long so that you can get those real-time updates from the National Weather Service. And until then, let's take a look at the satellite, shall we?